Today on Notsam Wrestling, WrestlePalooza is in the books. Brock Lesnar crushes John Cena. Cody Rhodes keeps that WWE Championship. The ESPN WWE partnership is officially activated. AEW All Out is in the books. Title changes, surprise returns, and more. Stephanie McMahon going into the Hall of Fame, and so much more. This is Notsam Wrestling. Welcome to Notsam Wrestling. Myself, I am freshly back from Indianapolis, Indiana. Indy is one of, if not the best cities for hosting big events. I can't, everything in Indianapolis, I should say, everything in Indianapolis is a half mile. Everything. You're right there, and whether I was walking over to the Superstore, whether I was walking over to the arena, if I had to go to the stadium, if I had to go get a nice dinner at St. Elmo's, wherever I wanted to go, it was within a half mile. I swear, like it's the type of city where you go, you rent a car, you park it in the hotel, and you realize that you're just paying for a rental car and hotel parking for absolutely no reason because they have built this place to just be centrally located. All the fans there, so enthusiastic about everything going on. You know, it's always fun to catch the vibe of the city. I always try to get to the Superstore when I go to these shows. I always try to walk around a little bit. I always just try to catch the vibe of the wrestling fans in the area when I'm lucky enough to be in these cities and be in attendance of these shows. And Andy, everywhere that I went, people were excited about the show. People had their merch on. People were talking to me. It was so much fun to be out there for WrestlePalooza and for the ESPN deal kind of kicking off for WWE. And I think that's, so if you're trying to keep up with me, so I was out there to do the WrestlePalooza Recap podcast, which is on the WWE's YouTube channel and all podcast feeds. You can check that out after this is over. I was also on the Countdown to WrestlePalooza with Megan Morant, and I got to sit in on the panel that was hosted by the guys from O'Shea Jackson's wrestling podcast, the spinoff of the Rich Eisen show. That those guys have been doing an incredible job with their show. But it was the first show on Saturday, the Road to WrestlePalooza, which was live on the ESPN app. And I got to be a part of that and sit on the panel with The Miz for a while and break down everything that was going on. So it was a lot of fun. I also want to say, while we're keeping everything up, people are, and if you pre-ordered your Build a Sam Roberts action figure, the Mattel Sam Roberts action figure that you get through all the pieces in this year's WrestleMania series of Elite WWE Mattel action figures, those sets are shipping from Ringside Collectibles now. I'm not sure as of the time, like as I just looked at them, you can't get the set on Ringside anymore. They have 3 of the 4, but I think they will be getting more, I hope. So if you haven't gotten it yet, make sure you get that WrestleMania series. If you pre-ordered it, they should be on their way in. I know we got a couple sets over here for the family, and everybody's very excited. It's a very, very cool thing. But we should start with WrestlePalooza and really with the ESPN app. So let's take it first from our perspective, from the fans' perspective, from how do you actually watch this thing? How on earth do you watch WrestlePalooza? And I obviously did not watch it live because I was in the building. But in terms of watching it after, because I wanted to see, you know, kind of rewatch some stuff and everything, I had no problem with it. The way that I did it was I lumped it in with my pre-existing. So I have like a Hulu Disney Plus bundle. And that's done mine is done through Hulu. So they just sent me into my Hulu account and I could add in the ESPN service for like, I don't know, it's 10 or 15 bucks extra, maybe 10 bucks extra, something like that. And it allowed me to add it in. And then once I added it in, I don't even have to go to the ESPN app. Now, maybe you have to do to watch it live. I think you still have to watch it live there, but I'm able to watch now WrestlePalooza, the Road to WrestlePalooza show that I was on, all of that I can watch on Disney Plus. Like there's a big banner on Disney Plus where you can watch it because Disney Plus is like this hub that absorbs content both from Hulu and from ESPN. So I didn't have any problems watching the replay of it, but that's also because I didn't try to log in. I have YouTube TV for my cable, so I already know I'm not getting it with my cable. So that's how I did it. And really, I mean, 10 or 15 bucks or whatever it was, not the greatest news in the world, but also, number one, I paid $50 for the AEW pay-per-view and do every, 10 times a year. And that's what I'm paying for, like Peacock anyway. And if you're asking, I remember going back to the days where I was actually buying pay-per-views. So the idea that it's like 15 bucks, I'm like, yeah, especially on SummerSlam or WrestleMania, because then you're getting both nights. And it's not like they're jacking up the price. But I know that there were people that had trouble figuring it out for sure. And, I mean, it's going to happen. It's not a convenient thing for wrestling fans to have our content get moved. And in this day and age, we're just not, it's not a convenient thing for any content to get moved. There's nothing more annoying than a movie disappearing from one streaming service. Then you have to figure out the other streaming service that it's on and all this stuff. But it's just the way, I guess, technology works now. But I kind of had this epiphany over the weekend that this is about so much more than WWE PLEs being streamed on this app. And a part of it was, that incredible package that they showed at the beginning of WrestlePalooza that was sort of tracking the growth of ESPN and WWE as parallels. Two giant enterprises that weren't necessarily destined for greatness in the eyes of many, but both believed in what they were doing and both were able to rise to this place where not only were they at the top of their industries, but also the top of any industry, were names that were synonymous with sports and entertainment. And I thought they did a good job of telling that story. But I really got it when I was having dinner on Friday. And it was at a restaurant bar, and all the TVs were on. And most bars play ESPN on the TV. And I'm just looking, and you couldn't escape WrestlePalooza. Like, it was on everything. Every show, it was on the lower third while the show was on. They would go to break, and there would be commercials for WrestlePalooza. Little banner would flash up, by the way, little thing on the corner. By the way, Saturday, WrestlePalooza, they were airing a special for it on the network. And then you go to the website, and it's at anybody going to the ESPN website for sports scores or whatever, it's at the top of the page, and you realize that this is not just. There was a time in professional wrestling when if you made a deal like this, take for example, why did WCW go out of business? Was it Vince Russo, the finger poke of doom? Was it this? Was it? No. The real reason WCW went out of business is because TBS and TNT didn't want to run it on their channels. And when the company merged with AOL, Ted Turner didn't have the power to keep it. But that's all to say that it was never, even when Nitro was the hottest show on television, not just the hottest wrestling show, but the hottest show. With the NWO being the hottest angle, not in wrestling, but in most of entertainment. There was still this thing where wrestling was the stepchild that we don't talk about over here. Wrestling was this thing. Yeah, this is here if you like wrestling, but we don't really talk about that. We like our dramas and our films, And this was something that was regular in wrestling, that no matter how close you would get to that big thing, and no matter how successful that you were, that mainstream would still treat you like an other. The mainstream would still treat wrestling like an other. And you would do a deal like WWE's done with ESPN. And it would be yeah, ESPN would accept the wrestling fans, and they would accept the wrestling fans' money. But they wouldn't want to tarnish or sully their image with this lowbrow professional wrestling. Oh, heavens, and certainly not. Perish the thought. But now, it's all different. Now the value of what WWE and professional wrestling bring is being acknowledged. And there is this thing of no, we want to loop WWE in so that WWE becomes this bigger part of the ESPN family and the offerings that we have. And that to me is what it was all about. Like the fact that you had on the media side at WrestlePalooza, both WWE production people and ESPN production people. And both teams were looking at this thing like this was a massive, massive show to kind of showcase to the world and to showcase to ESPN. And it was really, really interesting just seeing it from that perspective. And I think that even more than just, hey, WrestleMania is going to be on ESPN, so let's get some subscribers. It's this thing of WWE getting to couple themselves with the worldwide leader in sports and ESPN going, no, WWE is something we're really proud to have at the top of our mantle. I hope it continues this way. It feels like it will. This didn't feel like a one-off, especially the way they just rained down promotion starting on like Friday and into Saturday all day long on Saturday. It was everywhere. And I think that's really what this is about. It's about WWE becoming a big part of what ESPN has to offer. And I think that is massive for WWE. I think it's massive for pro wrestling. And I think it's massive for pro wrestling fans. You know, I get change being scary, and I agree that change is scary. But at the same time, you know, for all of us that were ever made fun of for watching wrestling or for any of us that were condescended to as if we didn't understand what we were watching, to watch the mainstreaming of wrestling happen in real time. And, you know, to me, I thought like WrestlePalooza from a WWE perspective was the only thing I could really compare it to was Netflix Raw, where it's like, yes, it's a giant wrestling show. And yes, it's a giant wrestling show that you want wrestling fans to watch and enjoy, hopefully. But it's also like, hey, bigwigs at ESPN, look at what we're doing. Hey, bigwigs outside of ESPN that are curious about this deal, look at what we're doing. It's a showcase to show the world what WWE and ESPN will look like together. Now, the truly sort of jaw-dropping part of all of this is that Netflix Raw was 9 months ago. That this massive partnership with ESPN comes in the same calendar year as this massive partnership with Netflix. I talk about it all the time. And, you know, as a podcast that lives in that reaction space, like the level, the speed at which we're moving as an industry, the speed at which wrestling is moving has never been seen before. Like, there's nothing like it. And I think that that's why a lot of times, like, we're looking at right now going, why isn't this happening? Why isn't that happening? Because the speed at which it's moving doesn't allow us to kind of sit back and watch this thing move over the course of 3 or 4 months like it might have before. Because every 3 or 4 months, the world of professional wrestling looks completely different. And I don't know if that will eventually kind of settle and go like, okay, we're where we intended to be. Now we can let this thing cook. Or if it's going to just keep being like, boom, now we got this. Boom, now we got that. And, you know, I don't mind it either way. You know, I like the idea of letting it settle and watching stories simmer and things work themselves out. But I also love this sort of unpredictable nature of, by the way, we got another one dropping right now. Not tomorrow, not next week, right now. Before you even had a chance to write the rumor report, the announcement's already been made and we're working on the next one. It's wild. It's wild. And I think ESPN is a big part of that. And it's amazing. Signing on to Disney Plus and seeing a WrestlePalooza banner at the top of the screen, it really is a wild, wild thing. So I thought that like I said, I thought that the video package that started WrestlePalooza was great. As advertised, as they announced on McAfee's show, they did indeed start with Brock Lesnar and John Cena. Of course, I did an emergency podcast right after WrestlePalooza about Brock Lesnar and John Cena because to me, this was probably the most newsworthy thing that happened. It was certainly the thing that got people talking the most, but that was Brock Lesnar, like he did in 2014, destroying John Cena. And like they did in 2014, a lot of fans thinking this was horrible. There were a lot of and it's really interesting to me because it was like, did I think this was going to happen? No, I did not think that Brock Lesnar was going to pull another Suplex City and destroy John Cena again. But I knew it was a possibility. I think that is, it's the same, like if you really think about it, there are still people to this day that say Brock Lesnar did not need to beat The Undertaker's streak. The Undertaker's streak should never have been broken, and Brock Lesnar didn't need that, which I don't like the need, don't need thing. But Brock Lesnar didn't need it, and it didn't help him. He's always been Brock. He always will be Brock. And that's simply not true. If you look at what Brock Lesnar was doing before The Undertaker's streak, like Brock Lesnar was brought back to the WWE to make John Cena strong again after John Cena had lost to The Rock at WrestleMania 28. John Cena, after a year-long buildup, lost to The Rock at WrestleMania 28. So once you're off of WrestleMania, how do you build that character back up now that The Rock's not on television anymore? Brock Lesnar comes back as an absolute shock. And at the pay-per-view after WrestleMania, John Cena is able to beat Brock Lesnar. And if you go to, it must have been WrestleMania, that was 29. 29 was Brock's first WrestleMania back. Triple H beat Brock Lesnar. There was this thing when Brock, from WrestleMania 28, the night after WrestleMania 28, up until the Undertaker match, where Brock Lesnar didn't wrestle that often, and Brock Lesnar didn't lose all the time, but there was this thing where Brock Lesnar, you could already tell, was being brought in to be the beast that couldn't be conquered so that he could be conquered. He was the monster that was built so baby faces could have a strong win. And that's not who he is anymore. That can happen, but that's not how we look at him anymore. We now look at Brock Lesnar as somebody that whenever you have a conversation about Brock, and this has been for the last, so it's been almost 12 years, whenever you have a conversation about Brock and a match that Brock is in, you have to say, there's a real possibility that Brock just kills the guy, just suplexes him to death and walks out as the winner. It's a real possibility every time. And the reason for that is because he beat The Undertaker's streak, because he Suplex City John Cena, because then he went on and completely changed the trajectory of what he was doing. And I talk about this with John Cena and the passing of the torch. It doesn't work. Like, you can't pass the torch to somebody, say, coming up from NXT. Like, if a rookie had beaten The Undertaker's streak, it wouldn't have done anything. It would have been like Austin Theory beating John Cena at WrestleMania 39. It doesn't do anything because Austin Theory's not in the spot yet to carry John Cena's torch. So the same thing would have been true for The Undertaker. If you had, let's say The Undertaker's streak gets broken by, I don't know whoever was, up and coming around like WrestleMania 30, WrestleMania 31-ish. They wouldn't have been able to carry The Undertaker's streak. They wouldn't have been able to use it to be as big, if not bigger, than The Undertaker's streak. And I think that the reputation of Brock Lesnar is as big as The Undertaker's WrestleMania streak. And I've always felt that way. I've been pretty consistent on my feelings about Brock Lesnar beating that streak. So the fact that he does that and the fact that he comes out and appears to be ageless, just comes out when he comes out, and whenever he does, he's a monster and he's in monstrous shape, and he never isn't Brock. So the idea that this is unheard of, the idea that it is unfathomable that Brock Lesnar would do to John Cena what Brock Lesnar did to John Cena at WrestlePalooza, to me is a little bit confusing because that's who Brock Lesnar is. There are plenty who are like, I'm not saying it's unfathomable, I'm saying it sucked. There are many who are very displeased. They think, the whole retirement tour has been fumbled because of and it's like, let's not Let's not assess the retirement tour until the end of the year. That would be the time to assess the full retirement tour. Because I don't think that we thought that we were going to get the match that we got with Cody Rhodes, the match that we got with Logan Paul. I don't think there were people when John Cena was still a heel that would swear up and down that John Cena has completely lost it and is incapable. Not that he's performing his matches differently because he's portraying a heel, but there were people that would insist he is incapable of having matches like he used to. And he clearly has proven that that's not the case. Do I think that they're bringing Brock Lesnar in to kill John Cena willy-nilly to impress some people watching ESPN? I don't think so. I would be disappointed if that was the case. It would feel short-sighted if that was the case. I think there is a far greater likelihood that they're building a story, that instead of doing, just match after match after match, which, by the way, is not that bad of an idea. They could do that. They could just say, well, John Cena's a good guy now. He's got 5 dates left. We're just going to have 5 matches, and that's what we're going to do. They could do that. But if you do that, it becomes more difficult to take that energy and carry it into next year. Then it really just becomes about doing special matches for John Cena right now, which is an okay thing to do. If you were just like, no, we just want to honor John Cena because I think it would be cool. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think the thought here is, well, let's use this to make things even bigger next year when we don't have John. And I'm not saying that that's why they gave Brock Lesnar a victory, because they want to make Brock Lesnar this big star next year, because he would have been just as big a star. This is a victory. Like, Brock Lesnar, if he had lost to John Cena and then come back later, he would have been the exact same beast. He wouldn't have lost a thing. Unless they wanted to do more John Cena and Brock Lesnar stuff. If John Cena had beaten Brock Lesnar, they're not doing another Brock Lesnar match. We know John Cena is not going to be on television between now and Perth. My idea was to do an open challenge, have AJ Styles come out, you do the AJ Styles match. But I think the other idea is that you can do a Brock Lesnar rematch. And you say, well, why do we need Brock matches on the John Cena retirement tour? It's box office. I don't think you can deny, personal feelings aside, that Brock Lesnar is this massive, massive star. And by the way, there were other things where it was like, you really want kids crying? And it's like, yeah, of course you want kids crying if a bad guy is doing it. When I was growing up, kids cried. Kids cried when the Macho Man got bit by Jake the Snake. Kids cried when the earthquake smashed Hulk Hogan's ribs. Kids cried. They absolutely did. And you could say, well, it was okay that kids cried because Macho Man got his comeuppance against Jake the Snake Roberts. Really? At Tuesday in Texas? You think the big Tuesday in Texas match was bigger than what they might be doing here? Tuesday in Texas. That's your hill to die on. Okay. Tuesday in Texas it is then. But I've got to believe that this is a push towards Crown Jewel, that now Crown Jewel becomes an even bigger show, because you're in Perth, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, but you may have a Rhea Ripley championship match. You may, if we're doing the Crown Jewel championship, champion versus champion, have another Cody Seth match, which we'll talk about momentarily. You may have Cena versus Lesnar. Like, you're already building out another super card for Crown Jewel. And I think that was one of the things that made WrestlePalooza interesting. That this show was a super card, and you got what was advertised. And I think that part of wrestling moving so quickly is that we've seen so many big moments that we want the supercards to lead to big, big, big moments. It just becomes difficult when you do a PLE every 3 weeks to have a big, 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 big moment every 3 weeks, I think. Triple H had said earlier in the week that there were going to be surprises at WrestlePalooza. And I think that those surprises may be more applied to the ESPN audience. I think that you're talking about like I think Brock Lesnar beating John Cena is a surprise. Pat McAfee coming back is a surprise. They're just not the type of surprise. When a wrestling fan hears a surprise, we're thinking The Rock's coming back. We're thinking Jericho's coming back. Well, we get our expectations, and we're not good at that. I'm the same way. We get our expectations through the roof. And then unless we kind of maintain an awareness of like, okay, I brought my expectations up here, and maybe I did it because of the hype and the promotion around it, but still, let's get down to earth for a second. And if it's better than I expected, fantastic. But I mean, think of all the amazing moments at the end of PLEs that we've already had this year. Becky Lynch coming out and helping Seth Rollins retain the championship at Clash. Amazing. Brock Lesnar returning at the pay-per-view before that at SummerSlam. Amazing. Was Money in the Bank before SummerSlam, or was there one in between? Because you had R-Truth returning at Money in the Bank, which was an amazing moment. You could question how you feel about how it's panned out, but that moment in and of itself was amazing. You know, WrestleMania was Paul Heyman turning on Roman Reigns and CM Punk, joining Seth Rollins. Done to perfection. Elimination Chamber was The Rock coming back. This is all this year. And I think but that's part of raising the bar, right? That's part of bringing it to another level. If you're going to raise the bar, that's where the bar is going to be, and people are going to expect it. You know, I think that when you look at what's going on, I think that they're building something in the immediate with Brock. I thought that maybe you could have the Brock-John Cena match, and then if Brock is sticking around, maybe get back to Brock towards the end of the year or next year. But I think with the fact that Brock Lesnar has been kind of being a hunter on SmackDown, right? He F5s Ron Cena. He attacks Michael Cole. F5s Corey Graves twice. Leaves Corey Graves limp in the middle of the ring. Says to Paul Heyman, we should talk. Paul Heyman comes out at the show and introduces Brock Lesnar. And, you know, it's never just an introduction with Paul Heyman. I've got to believe, and I talked about this on the emergency pod, that we're headed to a War Games. You know, I could see there being one more Cena-Brock match, and then I could see there being a War Games match where Brock's on one team and Cena's on the other team. I mean, what else are you going to do for War Games that would be remotely as big as some of these other War Games have been? You know, you don't have the bloodline. I don't know if you have a return in your back pocket that you're going to use or something like that, but realistically, a babyface team led by John Cena and a heel team led by Brock Lesnar, there's 1 year that you can do this. John Cena's never been in a War Games match. If he's not in this year, he never will be in a War Games match. I feel like that's where it's all going. And if that's where it's all going, then it's hard for me to say that this is a fumble before we even know where it's going. It still could be a fumble. But if we don't know where it's going, and it fits the character of Brock Lesnar, this does not come out of nowhere. And on a retirement run that has been so full of nostalgia, so full of tributes to things that happened in the past, well, guess what? Turn on SummerSlam 2014, because we got another tribute at WrestlePalooza. You know, it's Brock, man. I love that we have this character in wrestling that can still be this bad guy, that can make children cry and make grown men throw a fit. And it's Brock. And say what you want, somehow it always seems to work out okay. Somehow it always seems to get back to something that we're interested in. We'll see. We'll see what happens. We saw it was bad guys winning at first, right? Because we saw Brock win, then we saw the Vision win, which, by the way, if you haven't yet, on the WrestlePalooza Recap podcast, Paul Heyman, Braun Breaker, and Bronson Reed did an interview in person with myself and Megan, and it got very, very, it got very hot in there. You should check it out. But we got a feel-good tag team match. I think that the mixed tag was the match of the show. It was exactly what it should have been. It was CM Punk and AJ Lee versus Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch. I loved how long they took to tag in AJ Lee. I loved that there were fake tags and the referee saying, I didn't see that tag. I loved that there was that psychology of Seth Rollins keeping CM Punk from tagging AJ Lee, but also knowing that he could not tag Becky Lynch, because if he tagged Becky Lynch, AJ Lee would automatically become the legal participant in the match. I thought all of that was excellently crafted. And then when we finally got that moment, when AJ Lee gets in the match, like halfway through the match, she finally gets in. And people are losing their minds, and it was one of those, like, jump in the ring, and you realize quickly that AJ hasn't lost a step, that there's no reason to be gentle, that there's no learning curve. Clearly, AJ has been doing the work. And she is in there looking, acting as if the last decade was just a blink. It didn't even really happen. All the work that got done in that decade did get done, but nothing has changed since I left you last, is what she said. The night after WrestleMania 31, when I said goodbye, I'm still the same person with the same skill set, ready to do the same performance. And yeah, I thought it was great. I love seeing Seth and Becky. I think this is working with Seth and Becky so much better than it was when they were baby faces. Seth and Becky as heels coming out, supporting each other in their heeldom, getting to wear purple together in those big ridiculous glasses, being lowered from that platform on the ceiling, taking a break in the match to embrace each other before CM Punk dives through the two ropes at them. I mean, just really wonderfully played out. False finishes. I thought it was a good move that the referee just let everything go. And you got, at a point, like, all four just competing all at the same time. Like, why not? Give everybody the show that they want to see. Becky Lynch puts CM Punk in the sharpshooter. AJ Lee puts Seth Rollins in the Black Widow. You had that wonderful table spot where you have Becky and AJ on one table and Punk and Seth on the other table, and Becky throws AJ into Punk so that he doesn't actually put Seth through the table, but they all just crash through. And then at the very end, it's the Black Widow applied to Becky. Becky taps out. And I thought that was such a strong finish, because they'll come up with every excuse you can think of, and they'll talk about it being a tag team and not a singles, and they'll talk about the referee not paying attention to the rules. They'll talk about every excuse that you can possibly think of. But ultimately, we all saw it. AJ Lee couldn't have come across better in that match. And now, if the next match is hypothetically Becky versus AJ, because it's not done. I mean, she got the best of Becky Lynch, AJ Lee did. That story's only just begun. And I don't even think that it needs to necessarily involve CM Punk and Seth Rollins anymore. I wouldn't be at all shocked if maybe Seth moves on to Cody, building up to Perth. Maybe Seth starts to kind of reacclimate himself within the Vision, because it has seemed like the Vision has been Paul Heyman, Braun Breaker, and Bronson Reed doing Vision business, and Seth Rollins being on this side quest over here. Now, maybe that's just because the Vision has many branches, or maybe that's just because this is what required now, and Seth's side quest comes to an end and he goes back to the group. Who knows? But I love the idea that it's not like you need to do two singles matches coming off of this. Eventually we'll get to another CM Punk Seth Rollins match. But it's just a natural thing now to go to Becky Lynch and AJ Lee with the thought that AJ Lee could win the Intercontinental Championship. She's as credible as it gets, but because she's so credible, that she doesn't have to. That if Becky Lynch is able to get one of her slick pins on AJ Lee, that'll be fine for AJ Lee. It'll just extend that rivalry further. And I think it'll be a long time. I think you've got quite a bit of legs on this thing. I think it'll be a while before you hear anybody complaining about Becky Lynch versus AJ Lee matches. So that was exactly what it should be. And then you had Cody versus Drew McIntyre. And this is so interesting to me. So from a character point of view, Cody did some things that were like sneaky. Cody luring Drew McIntyre into kicking him through the table, but he was playing possum, so Drew's foot went through the table instead. Cody taking advantage of the fact that Drew's leg was injured and getting the victory clean, 1, 2, 3. There is a growing subset of fans that were kind of hoping to see Drew McIntyre win the championship, that are ready to see Drew McIntyre win the championship. For me, Drew has... his stock doesn't get touched. The level that he's at doesn't get touched because he is so very good. But in terms of being like, how do you make him the guy that becomes the champion? I think there's one thing and one thing only to do. And that's on December, whenever it is, to give Drew McIntyre John Cena's last match. If Drew McIntyre can beat John Cena on John Cena's way out, then Drew McIntyre is immediately the guy. And he goes into 2026 that one level up. He needs to be one level up to be that champion that is now the champion that nobody can beat. I think John Cena could be the first, walking stone, I don't know, stone on the path, I'll say, to get there. But people are ready for it. And, I think there still is this rumbling, like ever since Cody won the title back, there is this, whenever I see Cody, like whenever I think about Cody, I go, it'd be so cool if Cody turned heel. But whenever I actually see him and see him interact with the audience, I go, he's got to be a babyface forever. He's the best at being a babyface. I love Cody as a babyface. But at the same time, when you think about it, when you separate yourself from it and you think about it, you go, that would be the epic move right now. And then, since John Cena might still be around, maybe at WrestleMania, John Cena talks to him and goes, this isn't who you were. But he's like, get out of my face, old man, type of Cody Rhodes, because he knows now John Cena's not coming back to do anything. I don't think we're necessarily far away from that as a possibility. But I also, I feel like people are being very flighty with it. That switch, once you flick that switch, that's a tough one to come back from. I thought the same thing about MJF turning babyface, that unless you're sure, I don't know if you should do it. And at first it was great, but then when it couldn't pan out for a myriad of reasons, there was no trapdoor and it didn't work anymore. It can't be contingent on one story. It has to be we're going to figure out how this character in an overarching way creates more money than the other character. That's the only way and only reason that it should be done. But he beat Drew clean, just a good guy win. And, I think it's time for Cody to give us another kind of mission statement as to who he is, what he intends to do, why he's the champion now, what did he learn not being the champion, reacquaint us with who Cody Rhodes is right now and get us to get on board again, because I think Cody can do that. And I think he should. Guys, we'll get right back to it, but stop wasting hours in the kitchen burning eggs. Huel's Black Edition powder, what's about to change your mornings entirely. You mix the powder with water for a complete meal in minutes. It's packed with 40 grams of plant-based protein and 27 essential vitamins and minerals. You'll start your day firing on all cylinders. Look, you got to get that protein in, and it becomes very difficult. You guys know how busy I am. How do you think I take care of myself? With products like Huel. Their Black Edition powder comes in flavors like salted caramel and chocolate. Or if you want to mix it up even more, try Huel's Daily Greens Ready to Drink. It's a sparkling drink in a can with 42 vitamins, minerals, and superfoods. I need that in my life. With flavors like blueberry, apple, and peach, it's not only delicious, it has 4 grams of fiber with only 25 calories. Look, together, Huel makes healthy eating simple. Try both today with 15% off your purchase for new customers with my exclusive code NOTSAM at Huel.com/NotSam. Use my code and fill out the post-checkout survey and help support the show. Cody was also, I think the way Cody talks about wanting to be the man is almost like bait to turn him in, to make him crazy enough to become a villain. You know what I mean? He's so insistent on that goal. And it's not for the fans, it's for his own desire. Maybe is the twist you put on it if you want to turn him into a villain. But he said on the post show that he's saying it without ego, but there is nobody in this company that is more fit to be the quarterback than I am. And, at the end of that post-show segment, you had Seth Rollins come in and stare down Cody Rhodes. And I think Cody Rhodes declaring himself as the man and the guy and wanting to be the guy, I think that what that does is it puts into question what is Seth Rollins' vision. And how can Seth Rollins be all about taking things over if Cody is the man and Seth's just the man on Raw? That's a different deal. And I think that that's something that would be worth kind of tackling if you're going to go to Seth and Cody at Crown Jewel. And I also think, while you're figuring out who this new version of Cody is, Crown Jewel is a time. Look, we've seen Cody Rhodes beat Seth Rollins in 3 huge pay-per-view matches. They were Cody's first 3 pay-per-view matches when he returned to the WWE. I think, especially because the WWE Championship is not on the line, if you are going champion versus champion for that Crown Jewel belt, instead of putting 2 Crown Jewel belts on Cody, I think if you have Seth beat Cody Rhodes, if you have Seth Rollins pin Cody Rhodes, then all of a sudden there's a new wrinkle on this vision thing. All of a sudden the idea of Seth being the guy is, well, it's at least up for conversation. But realistically, with Crown Jewel, you could be looking, we don't know anything yet, but you could be looking at Seth versus Cody. You could be looking at another John Cena versus Brock Lesnar match. You could be looking at AJ Lee versus Becky Lynch. You could be looking at, I don't know, maybe Stephanie Vaquer versus Rhea Ripley. I mean, we said this was a super card. I just named 4 matches. You add a 5th. And this Perth show could have an even bigger card than WrestlePalooza did, which is mind-blowing to think about. But while we're thinking about cards and while we're thinking about super shows and everything, of course, it was not just WrestlePalooza weekend. AEW All Out was also this weekend, Saturday at 3 p.m. Another very long show, 5-hour show, but everything on it's good. That's the thing. I don't complain about too much. There is no too much if it's good. The only time it gets to be too much is if it's not good. But yeah, that was not a surprise to me that All Out ran into the beginning of WrestlePalooza. I think that was something that everybody had factored in when they were figuring out when to put what on where. But there was so much that happened at All Out. I mean, it was, as long as that show was, it was absolutely packed. So it starts with Cope and Cage, or Cage and Cope, versus FTR. And the big news there is, first, you get the John Cena tribute from Edge. You get a 5-knuckle shuffle. You get the spin move. You get it all. And the fact that, after John Cena hit that spear and Edge returns the favor, you really do feel that sort of how important that connection is between John Cena and Edge, how important those two rivals are, and how it really is a shame that just because of timing, it would appear that we're not going to get that John Cena-Edge match. But Edge is on the short list. When you say, who is John Cena's greatest rival? To me, people are going to bring up Punk, people are going to bring up Brock, people are going to bring up AJ Styles, but it's either Randy Orton or Edge. Those are the only 2 conversations that I'll have, I think, about John Cena's greatest rivals, either Edge or Randy Orton. And so the fact that we got those Cena moves, and I thought it was great for Cena. It's thank you for tributing all of us, but allow us to tribute you for a second. And I love that Adam Copeland did that. They get the victory over FTR, but not the moral victory. We get the return of Beth, who used to be Phoenix. In fact, our old pal, the former Renee Paquette, was like, oh man, and Beth Phoenix coming out and making her AEW debut. I mean, to see Beth Phoenix and Tony is just like, yeah, Beth Copeland was great. Beth Copeland was great. I'm a big fan of the Glamazon. I'm a big fan of the whole Copeland family. The fact that 2 of my favorite wrestlers, who also in what I've interacted with them on are two of the greatest human beings that you'll ever meet, have created this family. Like, these children, these Copeland children, need to realize they're being raised by royalty, both in wrestling and in the human department. Just awesome. So I was very happy to see Beth come back. And then Beth ends up taking a pile driver from FTR at the end of the evening while, not at the end of the evening, at the end of the match while Cope is handcuffed to the rope. So we still got Cope's on the rope. It's a Cope on a rope. So we still got a lot to do there. And I wonder if maybe that'll bleed into the matriarchy and you end up getting some kind of, once what's his face is better. If it's him and Kip Sabian and maybe even Mother Wayne having a feud with Nick. I don't know why I'm blanking on the name. Probably because I haven't slept because I just got off a plane coming home from Indianapolis. Nick Wayne. I love that. I knew her name was Mother Wayne, and I was like, I know it's Nick. What's his last name? What's Mother Wayne? Well, yeah, Nick what? Wayne. That's why she's Mother Wayne. Yeah, but I think eventually Beth will have to get hands on Mother Wayne in a bigger way. But I wonder if there'll be some kind of 6-person tag. Of course there will be. I was going to say female inclusion, but there's not going to be female inclusion. Because even better than Beth putting her hands on Mother Wayne is going to be Beth beating up Stokely. And we love Stoke. He's been in this room before. He's been with me in the Notsam studio. He's the greatest. But FTR and Stoke versus Cope and Christian and Beth, Cope and Cage and Beth. Yeah. That's money. That's absolute money. So that was a big surprise of the night, Beth coming out. Then in terms of results, I would say the first big surprise of the night, for me anyway, was MJF losing to Mark Briscoe. It was the tables and tacks match. It was a great match, which, by the way, MJF had just had a great match like the night before. MJF versus Mystico, belt versus title, was fantastic. Bloody affair, great. And it's not a shock that it was great either. But MJF ends up losing to Mystico, coming to Toronto, losing to Mark Briscoe. Now, I think that this shows a great deal of discipline and maturity because MJF has that contract. Like, in my mind, he beats Mark Briscoe and he moves towards the title. But the logic is, and this is the right call. Why? He's got the contract. He doesn't need to beat Mark Briscoe before he becomes champion. If he loses to Mark Briscoe and then cashes in the contract soon, then he can still beat Hangman, get the championship. And now you just elevated Mark Briscoe to the point that he can show up and say, well, now I want an AEW World Championship match, and it makes sense. So, surprised to see MJF spend the weekend losing all his big matches, but also, based on the fact that he's got that contract, I think that's what makes him bulletproof and allows him right now to put these guys over. You just don't see MJF lose all that often, that's all. You got the coffin match, which I thought was a lot of fun because it was a reality-based coffin match. It wasn't a spooky coffin match. And I don't mind a spooky coffin match. In fact, I quite enjoy spooky coffin matches, but it wouldn't have made a ton of sense with Mox and Darby. But the fact that it was a reality-based coffin match where they're using, coffins that look like they just grabbed them from a funeral parlor and spray painted them. They're having trouble keeping them shut. Like, they're not performance coffins. They're coffins that bodies are meant to be buried in. But once you put one of those coffins in a wrestling match, like, the reason you can bury somebody in a coffin is because they don't move, hopefully, once they're in there. So the coffin stays put. It's tougher to get somebody moving in a coffin, and that's the whole point of this coffin match. So Darby ends up losing, which that part wasn't such a shock because of the fact that it felt like the Death Riders, like, it feels like they're getting a second wave. Like, this next story is being told. As soon as they started framing the Death Riders as they don't care about titles, they don't care about money, they only care about power, I go, oh, okay, I see where this is all going. So Mox should probably win as they start to tell this other story. But the surprise was, of course, the return of Pac. Pac coming back and showing up with his haircut and putting Darby Allin in that coffin. Lose now. couple matches later on in the night, Darby Allin would get out of the coffin. He would hit Mox in the larynx with a steel pipe, put him in a body bag, and light him on fire. So, I mean, to that point, it's like, if you tell me I'm going to win the match, but later on in the night I'm going to get lit on fire in a body bag, I'll rather lose the match, quite frankly. But it was crazy. It was all done in one shot, too. They actually lit Mox on fire in the body bag. Nuts. Absolutely insane. Might have been the biggest surprise of the night for me was Chris Statlander not only winning the AEW Women's World Championship, but pinning Toni Storm for it. That was a fatal four-way. You could have pinned anyone. She pinned Toni Storm and won the AEW Women's World Championship. Of all the people in that match, that would probably have been the last one that I thought was going to leave with the AEW Women's Championship, yet here we are. And, I think Toni Storm at this point is strong enough to not have that title. I think that it's going to open that title up to other women in the division now, and allow that title to be traded around. And maybe Toni is just, she still is a high-profile person. And quite frankly, it's a rarity in women's wrestling, but it's something that should happen more often. You've got this scenario where you can do an AEW Women's World title match, but also have Toni Storm have a match on a pay-per-view and still be, theoretically, the main event. I mean, the stories that Toni tells, people care about. And ultimately, that's what it's all about. But congratulations. I mean, you talk about a push for Chris Statlander. Massive, 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 massive. I guess, I don't know if I'm missing any, but the last surprise, I think, of the night was, of course, at the end of the Tag Team Championship match, which Brodito won that four-way ladder match to retain the AEW Tag Team Championship. It was the scapegoat, Jack Perry, coming out and showing up, and it was really interesting. Because when Jack Perry was in the ring with the Young Bucks, nobody was getting cheered or booed. Fans were like, aren't they all heels and now they're going to fight each other? I really don't want to cheer for either of these acts. And I was like, uh-oh. Did they not realize what they were getting into? And the Young Bucks get ready to finish off Jack Perry, and he just looks up and smiles, and we see this video. And this isn't a criticism. This is just me being funny. But I do love the idea of two guys are about to beat up somebody, and the lights go out, and then they're willing to watch a video. Like, let me show you this short film of why you shouldn't beat me up. Okay, I'll watch the short film. I think that's funny. But it was then, and I said this, I believe, on the Sirius show, on Notsam Wrestling Live, that Killswitch needs to be Luchasaurus yesterday. People love Luchasaurus. And he came back, and he got in the ring, and all people wanted was a reunion. And they got it. And they're singing, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm not going to do any more because I don't want to get, YouTube ad rev taken away or whatever. But it was just really interesting because it's such a good lesson, right? Because logically, on paper, you might say, well, after everything Jack Perry did, after everything the scapegoat did, how can we just kind of wash the slate clean and have him go back to being Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus? And the answer is because it's what people want. Because it's what people want to see. People will be excited about it. And it's going to be different. It's not. I mean, Jack Perry is an older human. He's a more experienced wrestler. Like, it's a different back and forth. And also, as much as they've been through, they now have that foundation and that history to treat each other differently on screen. Like, but it's not dissimilar. I mean, I'm not comparing the two, but like when John Cena decided he wasn't a heel anymore, all it took was one promo and just being like, nah, I'm not a heel anymore. Tomorrow I'm going to be a babyface at SummerSlam. And it's like, okay, because the fans want it. How does that make sense? It doesn't matter. It's what the fans want. And it's the same thing for Jungle Boy coming back. It's what the fans want. And they made that clear with the sounds that they made. And then, of course, Hangman retains in a not surprising classic. I say not surprising classic because we knew it would be a classic. I don't know if we knew it would go on for an hour. But, I mean, it's exactly how I thought it would go. that Adam Page would walk out champion, but Kyle Fletcher would walk out a star, even bigger than he was before he walked in. And that's, I think, what you got. What does Kyle Fletcher look like in a main event? This is what Kyle Fletcher looks like in a main event. Well, maybe I'm ready to see Kyle Fletcher in more main events. And I think that was the point. I think AEW on this show did a very good job of putting an emphasis on story behind all these matches, and did a very good job on getting people like new talent, getting them key victories. Like having the Hurt Syndicate lose, having MVP take that pin. That was big. It was a big night for Mark Briscoe. It was a big night for Jack Perry. It was a big night for Kyle Fletcher. It was a big night for Chris Statlander, obviously. So I think that it was a not surprisingly very good show, but also very strong for where we're going to next. And then that's the only thing. Just maintain the momentum until the next pay-per-view and keep it moving that way. Last thing before we get to emails, of course, the big announcement was made at WrestlePalooza that Stephanie McMahon is going to be the first inductee into the 2026 Hall of Fame this year. Will probably be in Las Vegas, which I think is great. I think, because regardless of who she's married to or what her last name is or any of it, when you just look at Stephanie McMahon as, you could just start as a performer. I mean, bar none, her performance belongs in the Hall of Fame. Going from the naive daughter of Mr. McMahon, who would get kidnapped and almost married to The Undertaker, to then also getting married to Triple H, to then the big swerve, to then like seeing the innocence of Stephanie McMahon shattered, and Stephanie becoming the quintessential heel. I mean, she was the model of a female heel in that era. Like, there was nobody better. No! Not just the screaming and everything. To watch Stephanie McMahon as a performer settle into adulthood and really kind of sink into that McMahon-Helmsley regime. Have her graduate past that and go through, like, by the way, different eras of WWE and generations of WWE fans, watching her be a general manager on SmackDown, then watching her become a member of the Authority with Triple H and that whole thing. I mean, she's been such a key fixture of WWE television for so long. And then you get into what she's done behind the scenes, whether it's modeling Rockers t-shirts in a WWE catalog, whether it's, being a head of creative for a period of time, I believe, whether it's, the influence that she's had on the current crop of women's wrestlers, and every story that you'll hear about her, especially this version of her, is just positive. She's a wonderful lady, great performer, and I can't wait to see her go into the Hall of Fame. I hope Triple H is inducting her, and that package, that video package, that highlight reel of Stephanie McMahon as a performer in the WWE is going to be one for the ages. Maybe before the Hall of Fame, we put together a special Stephanie McMahon on-screen character podcast. I think it could be really, really good. Let me know what you think. Email me, notsamwrestling@gmail.com. That email address is notsamwrestling@gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, YouTube/notsamwrestling. Don't forget to subscribe to the audio feed here and listen to us every day, Monday through Thursday on SiriusXM live from 12 to 2 p.m. Let's get to these emails. Camden writes in, Sam, hope all is well. I was at WrestlePalooza, and let me say that the crowd going in was red hot for Cena Lesnar, but when the crowd heard ladies and gentlemen, the crowd buzz was dialed up to 11. It was an awesome moment and experience. Love that we got the payoff from SmackDown instantly as opposed to just keep it there for down the road. That we should talk from Brock to Paul. That's true. And the Indianapolis crowd was really great. They were really great for that match. Obviously, Brock winning sucked the wind out of the room as it was intended, but it wasn't like in an irrecoverable way. They were so good for the mixed tag, so good for the women's match, which was spectacular. Stephanie Vaquer winning the Women's World Championship, and then there for the main event too. I mean, they were a great crowd, and I really do think that we got the beginning of this payoff. But I think the idea of Brock Lesnar potentially cooperating with the Vision could easily bring us to Survivor Series, and that all stems from this Paul Heyman thing. Mike writes in, greetings, my OPTC. I'll hit you with one of these.
5, 2.
The only way that Lesnar beatdown on Cena makes sense to me are Cena beats Lesnar one-on-one in a big hype rematch at Survivor Series, or 2, Lesnar is back long-term and he needs to look dangerous. Thoughts? Well, no. I mean, first, there's Perth. Crown Jewel is before Survivor Series. You know, I think there are a lot of ways where Lesnar beating Cena makes sense. You know, I think there are ways where it doesn't make sense. If you're not doing another Cena Lesnar match, then that doesn't make sense. But if you are, you would have to. I don't think it has to be at Survivor Series. I think you go Perth for the singles and then Survivor Series for the War Games for me. Ann writes in, light it up, Sam. I should get another button for that. Light it up. I'm pretty sure we just witnessed the greatest mixed tag of all time, unless you can think of any better. But did we not just see a hot contender for best combined build and match of the year so far, at least? Oh, and those combo entrances, chef's kiss. The entrances were both phenomenal with the mashup theme for both teams. And yeah, I think it's kind of a layup for best mixed tag of all time. If you've got any other suggestions, leave it in comments or reviews or email it in or whatever. I think you're absolutely right. I think it's a layup for best mixed tag of all time. When it comes to best match and best build of the year, there's been a lot of them. So that's probably something we're going to have to tackle in December. But it was perfect. Let's see. David writes in, as our OPTC, I need your wisdom and knowledge to help me make sense of something. Why were the commentators throughout the match constantly telling us Cody was suffering from some sort of head injury, only for him to cleanly kick out of a Claymore, which is literally a massive boot to the head? I think it was to create, well, by the way, Dave is from Aberdeen, Scotland, which I love the international emails, but also probably a Drew loyalist being from Scotland. I think just to make it seem like it's even more courageous that he kicked out. You know, to make it seem like the Claymore is even more devastating, just to add heightened drama to it, is the way I took it. David from Austin writes in, Sammy Brand Muffins. Yes, that's how long I've been listening for. Keep up the great content. And how about a Fatu? Yeah. Fatu! Unless I'm mistaken, Tiffany Stratton was supposed to be involved in the 6-woman tag match at NXT Homecoming. That is true. Instead, it was Stephanie Vaquer, Rhea Ripley, and Lyra Valkyria. Any knowledge on why the switch was made? Keep crushing it, Sammy. No, many rumors on the internet, but I think Ava put out a tweet that Tiffany Stratton was not medically cleared or not cleared for whatever reason at the last minute. So they decided to make the old switcheroo. But no, they had made an announcement in advance that she wasn't cleared for whatever reason. Chris writes in, hello, my OPTC. They want one too. With Sami Zayn's U.S. Open Challenge, do you possibly see a KO return in the near future? To answer, if it is KO is 100%. If not, how would you book KO's return? And what would his character be? Would you book KO's return to do something with him and Chris Jericho? No, I mean, it depends. I think Kevin, like when he went out, the word on the street was that, I mean, at least on the internet street, people were wondering if he would be back for WrestleMania this next year. Like, it was like, he may not be back. He's not going to be at WrestleMania 41. He might not be here for 42. So, you know, I'm not ready to start fantasy booking him. This is like the Randy Orton situation of a couple years ago. I'm not ready to start fantasy booking him for anything, to tell you the truth. I think that when it's closer to time, when we think it's a possibility, then we can have a conversation and go, here's where it would go. But because the product is changing so greatly, so quickly, I can't tell you. But I doubt that he's going to open the Open Challenge just because of timing. It would be great if he did that and just destroyed Sami Zayn and took the title. He was a heel, but I don't think so. Lewis writes in, first, I acknowledge you, my OPTC. Thank you. My first time emailing, longtime listener. You're my Monday Night Raw pre-show. I hope you do the sandwich. I hope you bookend. I hope you do this as the Monday Night Raw pre-show, and then you do Raw recap as the Monday Night Raw after show. My name is Lewis. I was watching Monday Night Raw, and I believe it was the Americano Dragon Lee match. Apologies if I'm wrong. I don't know. I love the match, but I thought to myself, if there was one or two less 1-2-0s, it could have been an all-timer Monday Night Raw match. My question is, in your opinion, what's the perfect amount of false finishes for a match you'd consider. I think you do God's work, he says, spreading the positivity on this silly, great, beautiful world of pro wrestling. May I ask for a Fatu? Yes, you may. Fatu! There's not a solid number. I think that's a good question. I think those falsies, I think it's tough to plan a ton of them because if you don't have the crowd believe, I think as long as the crowd believes that it's a real finish, you can keep doing them. If the crowd no longer believes that it's a real finish, you must stop. And I think that's got to be the rule, And also, I think if you're doing a lot of them, it should be in a match with huge stakes. To do it in like Dragon Lee versus Grande Americano, it's almost like, okay, this isn't even for a championship or anything. Why do we need this many false finishes, I guess? But I didn't have a problem with it when it happened, but that would be my response. Scott writes in, Sam, what's up, OPTC? Greetings from Tasmania, Australia, my man. I just listened to your update about the bloodline story in the shadow of Roman over Jay and the emotional abuse and gaslighting of Jay from his cousin. And I've got to tell you that I love your thoughts. Yes, and I agree. I had an inkling of this dating all the way back to when Jay left the bloodline. How do you think this will affect his relationship with Jimmy? And where could our man Solo fit into this? Love your work. Sending you my best to your MFTs. Oh, they're very, very happy you're doing that. Yeah, I mean, listen. We were talking about this as it led up to WrestlePalooza, and I think there is something there. I'm surprised that Jimmy didn't eat the pin, that Jay ate the pin, because maybe it's not going to be quite so clear that Jay is going to become this leader. But also, if Roman has a problem with it, and he comes back and it starts kind of a Roman-Jay feud, who does Jimmy side with? Does Jimmy go heel and go on Jay's side? Does Jimmy know that Jay's wrong and go on Roman's side because Roman's not acting as much like Roman? Or do you not do any of this because Jay is such a good babyface? These are the things that we're stuck with. These are the things that we're stuck with in the world of professional wrestling. I appreciate you guys hanging out. Like I said before, make sure you're subscribed to everything, interacting with everything, listening on Sirius, spreading the good word. And I will see you here very soon, once again, on Notsam Wrestling.